Hey sweet friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Maylene Call from Mrs. Call's Campers. Today's video is going to be really fun because I'm doing one of my favorite things, which is baking, and I'm making one of my favorite things, which is chocolate chip cookies. These cookies are really delicious because they are perfectly done on the outside, but the inside is a little bit gooey, just a little bit cakey. They are absolutely fantastic. I've seen you guys make them on my Instagram and tag me in them, so thank you. If you make them, please tag me. I will have the recipe for you in the description box. And if you're wondering why it's dark in my kitchen and I'm wearing pajamas, that's because it is after midnight, which is kind of the best time to make cookies anyway, so. We're gonna preheat our oven to 410 degrees, and this is going to let the cookies get crisp on the outside but stay gooey on the inside. I'm gonna be using my stand mixer today, but these can totally be made by hand. Just wanted to throw that out there. So for the first set of ingredients, we're actually gonna use an entire cup of brown sugar, half a cup of normal granulated sugar, and then 1 cup or 2 sticks of butter. I'm using unsalted butter. If you only have salted butter, just don't add the salt in later on. Then we're gonna be adding 2 eggs one by one. Whoa. For the second set of ingredients, we're gonna be using equal parts all-purpose flour and cake flour. Cake flour isn't 100% necessary, but if you ask me, I would say it is because it gives it a really, really good texture. It's one of the reasons why these cookies come out so, so good, but if you don't have cake flour, that's okay. You can substitute for all-purpose flour. The only thing you cannot do is only use cake flour. If you just use cake flour, these cookies are gonna come out awful and crumbly and not good. So we're using 1.5 cups flour, 1.5 cups cake flour, a teaspoon of cornstarch, 3/4 teaspoon of baking soda, 3/4 teaspoon of salt. And then finally, the best part is our chocolate chips. So I always use a mixture of chunks and mini chips. I think this just makes them taste so much better. If you only have the normal semi-sweet chocolate chips, like the normal size ones, I would recommend chopping some of them up. I feel like it just gives it a better flavor and the chocolate melts differently throughout the cookie and it just makes it extra yummy. So I always mix up my chocolate chips, and we're gonna use 2 cups. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is cube up this butter just to make it easier on my mixer to mix, because the mixer obviously can't mix a whole cup of butter. And you do want this to be cold butter, by the way. So here is our 1 cup of cold cubed butter, and we're gonna put that right into our mixer. Next, we're adding a full cup of brown sugar. Make sure when you measure this, you're actually packing it into your measuring cup, and then half a cup of normal sugar. So I'm making sure that my brown sugar is packed in and leveled off, and we're just gonna plop her in there. I feel like you should see this because it's always really satisfying. Now we're doing half a cup of normal sugar. There you go. This is what she should look like when you're ready to start mixing. We're just gonna use a normal paddle mixer. And we're gonna make sure we lock our KitchenAid and then start mixing. So we're gonna mix this just until it gets really creamy, and while this is mixing, we're gonna work on our second set of ingredients, which is our dry ingredients. So I added 1.5 cups of flour and 1.5 cups of cake flour, and then I did stop our mixer just to kind of show you what she looks like. So I'm just gonna take my knife and kind of get the dough out of the paddle mixer, and then I'm gonna take my spatula, this is my favorite spatula ever, and scrape down the sides. And I just want to show you, this is the texture we're looking for. It's nice and creamy. And now we're gonna add in our eggs one by one. One egg. I feel like if you hold the mixer, it makes it mix better. And then we're gonna add our second egg. Bam. and this is what she looks like. She doesn't look too good now, but I promise you she is going to be amazing. Okay, so now that we've got our flour, we just need to add a teaspoon of cornstarch. And then we're gonna add 3/4 teaspoon of baking soda. And then 3/4 teaspoon of salt. 1, 2, that was not really 2, 3. And that's everything for our dry ingredients. Before we put our dry ingredients into our wet ingredients though, we wanna make sure that we whisk them up really, really well. Now we're gonna add our set of dry ingredients into our set of wet ingredients, and I kind of just scoop them in. I have about half the dry mixture in there, and we're just gonna mix. And then once it is pretty much incorporated, we're gonna add the rest of it. You can add it in all at once if you want to, but it's just easier to add it in 2 batches. There we go. So the important thing is, while this is mixing, to stand by it and not walk away from it, because you don't want this to get over mixed. So we want it to be mixed just enough. Okay. She looks pretty good. I think I'm gonna stop here because we still need to add in our chocolate chips. So that was not very much time at all. So like I said, I'm using a mixture of chunks and mini chocolate chips because it gives it a really good melty chocolatey flavor. 1 cup, 2 cups. And actually we're gonna use these a little bit later too when we make our cookies, so just leave it out. I'm gonna try to get everything I can off of our paddle, and I can just lick the rest of that later. So the thing about this cookie dough is it's thick, and we want it to be thick, and we want to make sure that it's still kind of cold when it goes into the oven. So this should be a little bit hard to mix right now. Your dough should be really, really thick. And you can use your mixer a little bit for this part. As long as you don't overmix, you're gonna be okay, but it's really easy to overmix them, so just be careful. Okay. Wow, she's beautiful. So again, I'm gonna get all of this off of the paddle. And this is what you want. You want it to be really thick, like this. So this is our, oops. So this is our beautiful cookie dough. She should be really thick. She should be still kind of cold still. If for some reason your dough is not cold, just stick it in the fridge for a little while, but as long as you only mixed it for a little while, it should be really cold and good to go. I'm gonna taste it, and it's so good. Next, you're going to need a baking sheet. I use these Silpat mat things. You can use parchment paper, or you know, however you make cookies. So these cookies are going to be really thick and really delicious, but in order to kind of help that along, we are going to make them twice the size of normal cookies. Just trust me on this. I'm actually going to use 2 spoons to kind of get them on the baking sheet. Actually, I'd say it's like 1.5 times the dough you would normally use. I don't know, I'll show you. So I'm just gonna scoop it and then kind of scoop it onto the baking tray, and then I'm gonna kind of mess up the surface so that they cook better. I'll show you. Okay, so I'm just going to take like literally just a big scoop of cookie dough, and then I'm gonna do this motion to kind of form it into a ball without touching it with my hands, because I don't want my hands to warm up the dough. And I'm gonna plop it right on the cookie sheet, just like that. So again, I'm just taking a big scoop and then just doing a little scooping motion to get it kind of in the shape of a ball, and then putting it on our cookie sheet. And anything that falls, you can just eat it. So it's hard to judge perfectly because we're not measuring, but just do your best to make them like about the same size so they cook evenly. I feel like I have this down to a science at this point. This part is important, so make sure you're listening to me. Make sure you're listening to me. We're going to kind of break the surface up of the cookies just a little bit, and then we're gonna put extra chocolate chips on top. So I'm gonna gently just kind of push them down a little bit and make sure the surface of them is like kind of like bumpy. And at this point you can kind of rearrange the dough so they're a bit more even. And when you do this to these cookies before they go into the oven, that's gonna make sure they come out looking really pretty, and it's also gonna help the texture when you eat them. Rough up the surface, and then this is when you wanna take a couple of your chocolate chips in chunks and kind of sprinkle them on top, and this just makes it a prettier cookie. And everybody knows that cookies that look better definitely taste better, so. Our cookies are good, they're ready to go, and we're gonna put them into the oven. And now this is important, we're gonna set our timer for 9 minutes. Actually 8 minutes, just so you can check on them, but really it's 9 minutes. So these cookies are gonna cook for about 9 to 10 minutes. It is a very small window of time because you want them to be golden on the bottom. So just starting to look golden around the edges, and maybe the tops are gonna get a little golden too. They're probably not gonna look done when you pull them, but it's very important to pull them because that is what's going to make them gooey and delicious. Part of the reason we're making the cookies so big, again, is just so that they're gooey and delicious on the inside. If for some reason you're like, Maylene, I love you, but I'm not gonna listen to you and I'm gonna make small cookies, that's totally okay. You can make small cookies too, but I would recommend dropping down the baking time. So maybe check them honestly at like 7 minutes if you make them small, because you definitely do not wanna overbake these cookies. It will just ruin all the magic of them. Oh, you want some cookies too? So I do have all this dough, and to be honest, I'm not gonna make it all tonight. I'm actually going to freeze it. So if you want to, you can totally freeze this dough. It'll be a-okay. I'm just making some cookies before I freeze it. I'm gonna freeze them like this, and then I'm gonna put them into a bag. Okay, so let's check on our cookies. And they're pretty much there. They need just a second longer. Okay, these are perfect. Okay, so this is what our cookies look like just coming out of the oven. So they are definitely golden on the edges, and then the tops of some of them are just starting to get brown. So what we're gonna do is let them cool just for a minute on the pan, and then we're gonna transfer them over to our cooling rack. Look at that one chunk right there, it's so cute. Gonna use this little spatula, and we're gonna just test to make sure that we can get underneath the whole cookie without it breaking apart. And then just gently set her over there. This is what the bottom of the cookie looks like. So these are our cookies. They look really, really good now, but the really important thing to do is wait before you eat them. Of course, they're gonna be delicious if you eat them hot. They're gonna taste like a warm cookie, but they are not gonna be special until you let them set for like at least 10 minutes. I'm telling you, they are going to be so perfect. So we're kind of letting them right now kind of fall a little bit into themselves. They're going to like deflate just a little bit, and then their texture is gonna really show, and they're just gonna be fantastic. So this is what the cookies look like after they have completely set. You can kind of tell where they're kind of brown on top, where we messed up the dough a little bit. And you can kind of see the texture that it gives these cookies, which I think makes them taste so much better. So I'll show you the bottom. Perfectly golden, brown bottoms. Absolutely beautiful. So when they're baking, you're only gonna see that edge get golden, but as soon as you see that, you wanna pull them so they have this nice pretty bottom. And then if you did our little trick, a lot of them will have spots of golden brown on top. So these are our cookies. Alright you guys, that's how you make my favorite chocolate chip cookies. Again, I will have the recipe linked for you in the description box down below. Let me know if you try these cookies, how they come out. You can tag me in your stories on Instagram. But for now, we're gonna open her up. It was really hard to pick which one I wanted to do, but I think we're gonna go with this one. So you can kind of see that she's like gooey on the inside already without even me opening it. At this point, the cookies have been setting for like 20 minutes, but what a magical moment. One quick last thing, you do want to store these in some kind of airtight container. You could store them in a Ziploc baggie. I love these containers by Rubbermaid. If you watch my channel, you know I'm obsessed with them. So I'm just gonna stick them all in this one. And I also wanted to show you, these were the cookies that I froze. So I froze them so that they would be kind of in a pre-formed ball format. And now I'm just gonna put them in a bag into the freezer, and I can cook as many as I want next time I want them.